So I want to go ahead and introduce our moderator for our panel today. We're going to switch gears a little bit from the single presenter to a panel style format. And this panel is going to be moderated by our own Tom Foley. And Tom Foley is our creative director here at Monotype. He's responsible for leading a team of designers creating fonts for the Monotype library and corporate brands. Words and letters are in Tom's blood. His great-grandfather was from a family of stonemasons that specialized in letter carving, and his uncle was a sign painter. Tom studied graphic design at the world-renowned University of the Arts London, Central St. Martin's. He also studied type design under Frida Sack of Foundry Types to supplement his graphic design coursework. Prior to Monotype, Tom spent 7 years at Type Foundry Dalton Mag, where he progressed from font developer to creative director. So I'm pleased to go ahead and introduce Tom, who will introduce our other two panelists today.
Hi, Alice. Yeah, hi, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, and welcome everyone to today's panel discussion. So I'm joined by two excellent and intelligent and experienced designers, Caterina Bianchini and Vincent Garcia, today, and I'll give you guys an introduction shortly. So first of all, I'd just like Caterina and to ask Caterina and Vincent to just switch on their cameras and switch on their microphones just to check we're good to go. So before I give the formal introduction, I'm just going to give a bit of background to this panel discussion. So, you know, we do find ourselves in quite strange and uncertain times, and we've talked about it a lot today throughout the conference and through the presentations. And, you know, we hear a lot about the statistics and the rate of change, and Mark talked about all the buzzwords and the way that, you know, some of these terms are almost becoming meaningless because we hear them so often. But I think the impact of COVID and the lockdown, it has fundamentally changed the way that we all live in the immediate term, potentially in the long term. And it's changed the way that we work. And as designers, it's also changed the way that we create. And this is the focus of today's discussion. I want to dig a bit into what are the realities of this acceleration, this digital acceleration and this transformation. Like, it has a far-reaching effect on business. So how could this change the way that we as designers create and solve problems for brands, both now and in the future? So that's a bit of the background. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our contributors for today's discussion. So our first panelist is Caterina Bianchini. Is that correct, Caterina?
Yeah. Perfect.
Fantastic. So Caterina is a founder and creative director of Studio Nari, a design studio established to bridge the gap between design and art. Her passion lies in conceptual thinking and bespoke lettering, with a creative process that draws the focus away from the do's and don'ts of formal textbook graphic design and practices a more humanistic and artistic approach. And this approach has caught the attention of some of the world's leading brands, including Apple Music, Vogue, Somerset House, Selfridge & Co., Barbican, Nike, and Levi's. And joining Caterina is Vincent Garcia. Vincent is VP of Design at Daily Motion, and he brings 2 decades of design expertise to the table. He leads the company's design strategy across all touch points, ensuring alignment with product, technology, and business goals, while deepening user engagement and strengthening design as a core company value. Prior to joining Daily Motion, Vincent was a service design lead at Fjord Stockholm, driving projects for Nordic and international brands and businesses across a wide range of sectors, such as telecommunications, banking, and aviation. When Vincent is not looking to the future for his next design idea, he spends time with his family in Stockholm, playing ice hockey and building Lego sets with his son. So welcome to you both. It's fantastic to have you. And I'm going to dive straight in. I mean, this is a bit of an understatement, and there is a bit of change in the air. But Caterina, starting with you, can you walk us through the conversations that you're having with clients these days? What are they worried about? What are they excited about? And what kinds of problems are they trying to solve at the moment?
Yeah, so I think what's starting to happen is clients are definitely at this stage getting a lot more used to the current state and this environment that we are in. And I suppose a client's problem becomes your problem as their design agency or as their designer. So I think one key thing that we've really started to focus on as a company is actually building a customer experience and really focusing on customer experience in everything that we do for a client now. So for instance, you know, it's a key component of how we begin a project is looking into strategy and how we can start to build that brand strategy. And that has actually become a lot more of a focus now when brands cannot actually interact with people in, you know, human to human or in a sort of physical environment. So this is something that we've definitely been thinking a little bit more about, thinking about tone of voice, brand strategy. Also, company values is very important in how we actually portray those, you know, just in social assets, how those assets interact and make a consumer feel, you know, do they feel like they are connecting with the brand and also trust it because they're not actually having that bricks and mortar experience. And I think that that's kind of like one sort of section that we've definitely been focusing on more in terms of dealing with clients, perhaps feelings of how can we connect with our consumers, or how can we ensure that what we are and who we are as a brand is definitely coming across in what we do. I'd say like a second thing for us is packaging has become quite an important part of what we do. We are, you know, print designers, so having a more bespoke or thought about packaging experience for customers has definitely become, again, a sort of central focus of any sort of brand identity. So with this, it's kind of almost the only touch point at the moment, you know, physical touch point at the moment that a consumer actually has with a brand. So I think that this has, again, been a sort of central point of conversation in terms of, you know, our clients and how we've been working with them. And then the final thing I'd say that we've kind of noticed in this shift is that actually clients are wanting to, you know, launch a lot quicker. So they are wanting to get this thing done, get it online, and as soon as possible sort of start, you know, populating this brand across web and whatever else. And I think that that is definitely due to this rise of, you know, the use of digital, online shopping, websites, etc. So I think that there is almost a bit more of a sense of sort of to hell with it, let's kind of get on and do it. You know, we've not actually had any super negative conversations with any clients that we've worked with. We're very fortunate in the fact that a lot of our clients, we're based in London, so a lot of our clients are actually overseas. And the few clients that we do have in London, just jumping on a Zoom call actually seems to suffice, you know, because we've already actually had that one-to-one sort of conversation or meeting. So, you know, I'm sure we'll kind of touch on that a bit later, but I think for us, it's not actually been as scary and as complicated as I think maybe for some other sectors, you know?
Yeah, so it's kind of basic, it's kind of like trying to help, I guess, your clients respond to this changing customer demand, right? And behavior, which is really changing customer behaviors. So for Vincent, for you then, like how do you stay connected to and keep up with shifting customer preferences? Because it's happening so fast and it's been accelerated.
Yeah.
What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Catherine was saying, I think it's the speed. Ultimately, you know, the way you get connected, the way you know or you understand customer behavior is the same, right? So the way you should do it is the same. The difference now is that obviously that change is happening faster, and hence as a result, I think ourselves, but I think everyone is forced, right, to make those changes faster. And Catherine just mentioned going to market faster. Maybe they're not waiting, right? They want to get out. So I think for us, I mean, bear in mind, we were already a digital organization, right? So we you know, our products are all online. And as a result, we were already a little bit in the path of getting ready to this kind of context. In fact, you know, the size of our organization and also the competitive landscape we're in, we're smaller, you know, we have to choose our battles very carefully. And as a result, you know, we're being used to having that pressure before. Now it's just a little bit faster. And I think not that long ago, we actually changed organizationally. We changed the way our operations, our teams are organized and operate in order to improve that time to market. So I would say, interestingly enough, we started just before, but I think the current context actually, has actually, in our sense, we were just about getting ready, and it's forced us to go a little bit faster on this. But the way we organize ourselves, I think, I can go a little bit better, a little bit more in detail if that's okay. But basically, we divided our organization into clear delivery lanes that are actually time dependent. So we're obviously a product, we're not an agency where we have a video platform, plus an advertising solution as well, and B2B solution. And the way we deliver product and the way we deliver our product to market faster, basically is through a much more clear cadence, right? So what I would, in terms of how we are able to get what we learn from the customers faster is how we operate. How do we organize ourselves in order to get those changes faster, if that makes any sense. I could go into a lot more detail, I guess, into it if needed, but I know we have a lot more questions but I think ultimately
it sounds like.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, Vincent, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think ultimately.
I think there was a bit of a lag there. Please.
Yeah, sure. I think ultimately what the organization needs to be ready is to be able to execute and go to market faster, right? And in order to do that, have the ability to have a regular cadence, and then focus also on what is the most important problem you need to solve, right? So it's not so much about efficiency, which obviously helps, but also productivity. So if you can set up a model that actually allows you to say, hey, I'm investing the right amount of time in the right problem, because that will allow me to address those faster, right? Given the context.
And Vincent, has the remote working been an issue? Has that been a problem with, like you said, trying to accelerate this process or respond faster? Or is it something that you guys had already kind of...
Again, yeah, we were, it's interesting because, Katerina said that they already had clients, right? Not all in London. We were in a similar situation, being all digital. We already started to define a remote policy within the organization, right? So our HR team already we're putting in place a remote policy to help address the needs of some of our colleagues. So we were already a little bit better prepared. However, what happened and a few months back, let's not diminish the task at hand. Our teams that basically within I think a couple of days, we went full remote, right? And so did I everyone else, right? So we were better prepared, but they did a great job in, I would say, addressing all the uncertainties and all the risk and all the question marks and all the unknowns. So we were able to adapt to the situation relatively quickly and really well. I have to say, I'm pretty proud of our colleagues and our teams that helped us to get there. They focused on finding out what people really needed, right? And training also managers and trying to support leadership. I think remote leadership is something that has taken a little bit of a question mark and say, okay, how do I manage, how do I lead teams remotely? So that obviously already helped. I think it's interesting. We had a session with the team yesterday because as we prepared to open offices again, and I think a lot of in different countries we're trying to see, okay, how do we get back? What does back mean? How are we addressing the changes? And overall, I was really glad, actually, and happy to see that the team shared my positive outtake of the changes, right? So it was very strange that after going through through lockdown was pretty tough for a lot of people, there was actually a very positive outcomes out of it, actually, in terms of people seeing that how remote or how even a potentially future partially remote would help them, would help their life balance, will help them reduce time, invest more time on themselves, more sleep, more exercise, but at what so far appears to be no or little cost on the creative execution, actually. So the tools we have nowadays, ultimately people, we're all designers, we all enjoy getting together in a room, the whiteboards, the archetypical, post-it notes. But actually the tools are there only to kickstart collaboration, right? Ultimately, what those tools are is they help us collaborate together, right? So if the current digital tools allow us to draw that mindset anyway, you can still work. And one of our team members, very rightly so, that actually said, well, nowadays as well, when we do creative sessions, when we do workshops or sprints or whatnot, we also save a huge amount of time in the preparation, the physical versus digital preparation, but also the sharing. A lot of the times, the sprints before, you had to prepare a lot, but there was preparation. Then, the event happened or the session happened, and then there's a very physical closure to it. And then you have to try and keep up with, okay, how do I translate that information? How do I share it? Now it's significantly easier, right? If you have a Slack channel that you opened before the session with the participants, the Slack channel remains open. If you continue sending, all the digital format on the tool, sometimes the tool remains, accessible, right? So before you would have to, what do I do with all these whiteboards? You need to, get rid of them and take photos. All of a sudden, that's still there, right? So there are, I think there's significant, and that's just a very superficial channel. And ultimately, yeah, positive on our side at least. And I'm not saying it hasn't been difficult for many, but I think from a design standpoint, with a little bit of preparation, I think you can really reap some benefits as well.
Fantastic.
I would just say, actually, on the back of that, that sense of saving, one thing for us as well is just, it's so obscure in relation to actually like the design element of it, but even just saving on things like us not being in the studio, not using electricity, not using the heating. I know it sounds really silly, but not printing anything because we don't have a printer. So we've actually, in terms of like resources, also saved. And that is one thing that, if we would do a client workshop, we'd prepare all these boards, we'd print everything out, we'd print a pack to sit in front of, the clients. And it's just that element of time saving. And actually that's something I'm going to touch upon a little bit later on, is just actually this sense of you just sit down and kind of get on, like your focus. I think a lot of people have gained focus in this time, and being allowed to focus and really think about what they're doing and how they're doing it, rather than kind of going into that environment where you meet people and you say, hey, how was your weekend? And you make your coffee, and you have that full from 9:30 to 10:30 of actually nobody does anything because everyone's just talking or making a coffee or whatever. So there is this sort of sense of everyone. I just feel like the way in which the cogs work feels a lot more smooth, or efficient. Definitely. Fascinating.
Because I wonder as well, do you feel that also on the client side? Because we've had discussions before this, and we talked previously about, the importance of human interaction and physical interaction, particularly with if you're trying to win new work or build relationships with new prospects. And a lot of that traditionally would be face-to-face meetings. And that's a process of building trust and building chemistry. How have you found, again, this remote thing on the topic of remote working, on the other side, on the client side, how has that been, Katerina? How's that been for you?
So kind of, as mentioned before, we definitely do have a lot of clients overseas. So we work a lot with, America and also Asia, but we do definitely still have a real solid little collection of clients in London who we used to always be able to sort of say, hey, let's just meet and have a coffee and kind of run through this and, get a sense of exactly how you're feeling about it, that sort of energy you're feeling towards the project or whatever. So I think for us, we've definitely pulled in some new ways of working. So we actually begin every project now with what we call an intention deck. And it's the clue is kind of in the name, and this intention deck really almost just is like mood board format of, hey, listen, we've heard what you're saying. We've had a call, and this is how we're seeing it. This is how we are envisaging it. Usually what we would have done is been able to meet the person and kind of just talk through those ideas. Just say, hey, listen, I'm just saying this off the top of my head, but we're thinking and we're seeing this and this, and kind of drawing and pulling from that interaction. So what we do now is we send off this intention deck, and this intention deck is usually based on a lot of research, because we really focus a lot on concepts. That's like our main thing, I would say, is we are a branding studio, but we think, like, we really like to pull and research and conceptualize and really push those concepts as well. So this sort of intention deck will hold usually sort of 5 different territories, and each of those territories can show this brand how they could perhaps, you know, move forward with this project. And actually what that's really allowed us to do is to put in things that really push them. So, you know, like, we always try and aim for something that's a bit more mental if we can get away with it. So this deck has really allowed us to sort of say, listen, you said that you wanted an edgy brand and you wanted to go out of the box. Like, this is 5 out of 5, absolutely batshit. And people, well, sorry, bat crazy. But, you know, like, it allows the client to also see what they could do if they have the guts, or if they wanted to really push this thing. So that's kind of one thing that we started to introduce. And then we always ensure that we have a video call with the video on. So we like to just ensure that, you know, even just through a screen, you are still at least making that connection just through, you know, eyesight, and just kind of getting an insight into that person and perhaps their body language and how they speak. And it just allows for a free flow of conversation. There is no way you can possibly connect with someone over email, because I would say they're like the most misconstrued way of speaking. Like, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, that person is really angry with me. And then, you know, you'll get on the phone and they're totally fine. And it's just because shorthand or whatever. And then our sort of third point of call with new clients is also a tailor-made sort of introduction deck. So we're like, hey, listen, this is the project that we think that we've done recently that perhaps we can't show on the website or whatever, that we think that you would be interested in and that we think align with you. So we're already kind of showing that, you know, we've thought about this and we've thought about you as a brand, as a company, and we want to just show you what we could do that we think would match your expectation. And then on the collaboration sort of side of things, and we've kind of touched upon this a little bit already, but I'd just say that as a team, we've had to become a lot more decisive. So every person in their role has had to just kind of sort of go forward and move forward with an intuition, like that gut feeling of, right, do you know what, this is what we're going to push forward, because we don't have each other there to say, hey, can you just come over and take a quick look at this and what do you think, you know? So I think that in that sense, through as a team in collaboration, we have definitely become more decisive. We've become more, our roles have become actually more individualistic, because we have had to sort of rely on this person's doing this whilst I'm doing this, and then we're going to pull everything together at the end. There's not that sort of just that immediate element of just being able to tap somebody on the shoulder and double check, you know, because we're not always on Slack or whatever, you know, in order to sort of have those quick sort of conversations and comments. And I would say overall, it's just positive. It's with the clients, we've just sort of pulled in those steps, which have also allowed us to push them in some ways, in their vision, in their thinking. But we've also been able to, as designers and as creatives, have more time to actually just think and then collaborate. So have this sort of quiet element or start point to every project, or this focus that, you know, you just cannot mirror in an office environment. It's just impossible, you know. Like, I think it's like when you're reading a book at home and you just kind of get into that really deep sort of meditative state, and then you kind of wake up out of it. And that's kind of what I've been feeling recently with design, is I kind of just completely zone out, and then I come back out a couple of hours later, and then I just think, wow, I got so much done. So yeah, I think that's.
No, it's really interesting. So it's kind of like it's a more focus and, I guess, more efficiency and better articulation of what you're trying to achieve with your clients.
Yeah.
Vincent, I want to go back to some of the points you made earlier. I get maybe dig a little bit deeper, and also thinking about your background, because you're primarily a digital designer, a digital product designer, right? You have a lot of experience there. You know, was thinking of a brand who unfortunately doesn't have a designer as, you know, enthusiastic as Katerina or yourself to kind of solve these problems. If you're a company going from really dealing with this shift and going from bricks and mortar to basically trying to do business through digital means, what advice would you give, or how would you start that process and help?
I do have that background, obviously, from at Dailymotion today. We don't need to deal with that, but before that, you know, digital transformation has been in the space and air of digital and management and consultancies for quite some time, right? So I think the key thing here for me is the effort of transformation, so that these companies who are now unfortunately being forced to transform much faster than before, they should not put too much emphasis on the digital side and more on the transformation side. And what I mean by this is that a lot of the times they see this shift as require them to digitize the current operations, right? It's like, we don't have digital, so let's just put digital, and we do the same, but in a digital context, right? And I think that unfortunately, basically does not actually allow them to either, you know, make the most out of it, or potentially put them in a relatively, or in a you know, very insecure space. I think what they need to do is actually invest in design, because and Katerina, you started with this, is, you know, better understand the current customer experience that has changed. Yeah. And to do that, you cannot, I think, you know, these companies need to invest in design as a way to allow them to survive, adapt, and actually grow, which is to transform. So there's a change management that needs to happen with the organization. It's not about, we just change that flow into a digital one and it's fine. I think also I still see, I hope that it's not very common, but I still hear of examples where traditional brick and mortar companies are, you know, still hiring external, like freelancers, right? Like they're still not committing. And I think I understand the budget challenges of, you know, you don't know what you're doing. So you can, as an organization, you're not going to put a lot of your budget in hiring and building massive teams, right? But I think they need to understand now that it's no longer a nice to have, that having a design as part of the organization is no longer, you know, nice to have. So, you know, invest in growing the team. Maybe you don't have to build a huge one, maybe just bring expertise in, and then help and engage with agencies that can help you make that transformation across, right? Because obviously a 1 or 2 people team inside a company is not going to be enough, but have someone internally, and then, you know, help if you need, bring external help that can actually speed it up faster. But ultimately, for me, is that yes, they need to invest in design. Nowadays, that's a nice to have, because the way designers work, our focus on the user experience and the broad end-to-end customer experience will help them unlock, not just translate, but actually adapt and modify and better serve the customers in an ever-changing landscape that we have today.
Yeah, amazing. Really interesting, really helpful. I'm actually going to maybe take this opportunity to maybe look at a couple of questions from our audience, if that's okay. And I think, just give me a second here, I'll just open my panel. We've got one, I think it's for you, Katerina. I think it's someone looking for a bit more information, or to elaborate on the name Not Always Right Ideas, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that's NARI. So NARI stands for Not Always Right Ideas.
Ah, okay.
So that's basically really just kind of encapsulates the way that we think, and our sort of artistic approach to everything that we do. So we want everything to kind of feel or be subjective. It's up to, it doesn't necessarily have to be a right, or what is considered to be right ideas. And this really comes into the way in which we push concepts as well, and how we build concepts, and how we push our clients as well to just kind of do those slightly edgier or riskier things when it comes to design. So I think the main place where it actually came from was last year I did a talk called The Art of Seeing, which was basically derived from 2 titles, one from Bruno Munari and one from John Berger. Bruno Munari is a very famous graphic designer and artist, and John Berger was a very famous art critic. And essentially we have this sort of 3-step process in the studio that is super, super simple. And that is, it kind of just really, the umbrella above all of that is not always right ideas. Like it doesn't always have to be the right idea. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong idea. You know, it's a bit of a play on words.
Nice. Lovely. I've got another question from Vicky Bowers. I think maybe this is a good one for you, Vincent. Do you think the turnaround time expectation from design to launch has been shortened because of instant gratification from sites like Amazon and online shopping?
I think users' expectation to get gratified has changed, and hence as a result, well, yeah, the answer is probably yes. I'm not sure. My point is, I'm not sure it's just because of Amazon. I think it's just in general for, you know, a younger audience and a younger generation is just getting content faster, shorter, faster, better. So that speed is just changing, right? Constantly all the time. And as a result, businesses have to adapt and we try to, you know, we feel the pressure. We feel like, okay, if we don't put this out, someone else will. If we are not able to get this out faster, there's probably a handful of other people that will be doing the same. So yeah, the answer is yes. And it's interesting because we constantly look at audiences. We currently look at, you know, the newer generations with you know, how we were concerned about Instagram. I mean, you mentioned Amazon and from a shopping standpoint, but I'm thinking more entertainment, right? You go from, you know, TV shows to shorter TV shows to, you know, Instagram stories and TikToks, and all of a sudden content consumption is shortening and shortening and shortening. And hence the experience, we need to think, how do we deliver experiences that handle that? And at the same time, there's always there's a balance that needs to be made, because, you know, everyone after spending 30-40 minutes, and I'm now deviating a little bit because I think the question was about product to launch. The answer was yes. But we also think, you know, we don't just think about launching product, we also think about the experiences we try to deliver and build. And we also think ourselves is, you know, how people who spend 30-40 minutes, whether it's YouTube, Dailymotion, you know, TikTok, after 30 minutes, you know, watching funny videos and entertainment videos, that's fine. But they start also to feel, okay, how much did I learn, right? How enriched I am. I'm very entertained, great, but how enriched I am. So, you know, how do you, you know, we're starting to think, how do you deliver for entertainment and enrichment and education? For us, that's a very interesting point at this time. So I think it's a sidetrack of the question, because I think it was related to product launch. But the reason I'm mentioning is because when we think about experience, it's in our case, our team, our product design team, also continue to think, how do we deliver better video consumption experiences, right? So yeah, we need, you know, we have to continue to improve on that. And I think the pressure is not gonna reduce. It's gonna continue to be faster and better. So for sure.
A great answer. Thank you very much. So I think we're just about out of time, unfortunately. We've had a couple of questions that I'm afraid I won't be able to read out, but maybe we can follow up afterwards in the chat. Katharina and Vincent, I have one last quick question for each of you. Pretty standard moderator questions, so I'll be prepared for this. But just with everything we discussed, and, you know, everything that's been discussed today, with all the fundamental shifts that we've discussed, do you have any predictions for the future, for the next year, 2 years, 5 years? What kind of habits that we have today are temporary, and what will become a necessity in the future?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go for it, Katharina.
I think one thing that is going to change is people's ability to focus, to educate, and to evolve. I think like people are going to become a lot quicker to adapt to any situation. And I think that this has kind of been the start point for that, you know, everything that's happened. And I actually think that's a really, really positive thing if people do take and learn from what has happened. You know, like Vincent said, in 3 days they had to go remote, which is crazy for like a platform like Dailymotion. But I think that ability to adapt almost allows anyone and everyone to kind of do anything that they want and what they could want, you know, if they really put their mind to it. And also having this time to almost indulge in this sense of focus. I would say what probably isn't here to stay, maybe unfortunately for some people, is probably the working from home, because I'm definitely wearing joggers in the bottom section of, you know, but I think that there'll definitely be a sort of 50-50 allowed to, you know, implementation of working from home and working in the office, because I think a lot of people have realized they can actually do a lot of the stuff that they did in the office at home, and that's kind of lovely if you're able to do it. I don't know what the future is. I just think the future is probably like a way faster paced thing, but that is kind of terrifying because it's already pretty fast. So
yeah, and just quickly, what we have got 1 minute left, literally. I'm really sorry, but any thoughts on that? Any additions to what Katerina has just said?
Not much. Just I think purposeful, as you said. I think there's an underlying current. The way we need to work, the way we can work, I think it will render to be effective. I think we'll have to be and will be more purposeful and with more rendered intent. I think that's Katerina put it way too good. So I just adding those 3 words. I think, I'm afraid that was a great ending. So I don't want to spoil it, Katerina.
Well, listen, thank you both. That was really interesting, really informative. And I can tell by the amount of questions that we got that people were really engaged. So thank you both, and best of luck.